listening to the Ultimate Outdoorsmen Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Burton, helping you on the path to becoming a better outdoorsman. Hello and welcome to the show, guys. Today's episode is episode 2, and deer season is kicking off across the country. Most places it is open. It's early bow season. A lot of people look forward to it every year. I myself am gonna bypass the heat this year. I'm skipping early bow season. I'm gonna wait till probably mid-October before I get up in my stand for the first time. I just hunt a small 5-acre property, so I try not to pressure the deer too much there. So mid-October is generally a good starting point for me. But since deer season has kicked off across the country, I figured we'd honor that with a little episode today on how to butcher your own deer. It's a great skill to know, and I feel like it's something every outdoorsman should know how to do. It's free, obviously. It beats paying $80+ to take your deer to the deer processor, and I mean, nothing against the processors, but you're not going to get as much meat back from them as you would if you did it yourself. And you get to pick what cuts and how you want to prepare the meat rather than pay them to do it for you. Another perk is you will have access to your meat straight away. There's no wait time. It's not like you're dropping it off and a week later you get a call saying, hey man, your deer's ready, come pick it up. You have it right there. It's ready to go. I mean, you can throw a couple steaks on while you're butchering it yourself and cook some up while you're waiting on it. It's also an extremely satisfying skill. It is really cool to not only spend the time scouting for the deer and checking your trail cams and figuring out their patterns and actually taking that shot and nailing your deer and skinning it, doing everything, and all from the field to the table. You had a hand in every single part of it. It's just a really cool skill to have. Before I get into this, there's one book I highly recommend anybody looking into learning how to butcher their own deer pick up. I don't know if you can get a hardback or paperback version off Amazon anymore. I looked around. I really didn't see it directly from Amazon. But they do have the Kindle edition, which is what I have, for $10, guys. It's a book called Dressing and Cooking Wild Game from Field to Table. This book is awesome. It has detailed photos on how to field dress, skin, butcher everything from deer down to quail, and it has a bunch of recipes in there. It has all kinds of stuff, guys. It's a really great book. I highly recommend it. Actually got the book from my father. I found it down in his basement when I first got into wanting to learn to butcher my own deer, and that was actually how I learned that, and watching a lot of YouTube videos. With each part of this too, I did go on YouTube and found a couple cool videos for you to watch. If you're more of a visual person, just watch those videos. It's step by step how to skin your deer and at least how to quarter it. So yeah, I'll have all those notes in the show links, as well as any products that I'm mentioned during the show today. So after you kill your deer, you get out there, you do your field dressing, you're ready to get into the quartering and all that stuff on it. The first thing you got to do is skin your deer. Skinning is not that hard. It's actually really easy to do, but it's a very important part of the process. You really got to watch the hair on that deer. Don't let a lot of it get on your meat because it will contaminate your meat. A lot of it, if you do get a little hair on it here and there, don't worry about it. It's going to be washed off later on in the process anyway. So just remember while you're doing this to try to keep hair down to a minimum. Something else you're going to need is a really sharp knife. The sharper your knife, the easier it will be to skin the deer. And actually having multiple knives on hand, because a deer's hide will dull a knife out pretty quick. You'll be surprised. So having a couple of knives on hand ready to go, so if one starts getting dull, you can just put that one down and maybe have your buddy who's with you or whoever else, maybe he can have a knife sharpener ready to go. Go ahead and start sharpening that one. Grab your backup knife and head into it and start right back where you left off. Another thing to really help you in this skinning and quartering process, it's something called a gambrel. Gambrels have been around for a really long time. You can get them as a kit. You can buy just the gambrel itself. But basically what it does is you'll look on the deer's hind legs. You'll feel around right above their knee. It'll feel like a little dip there. If you take your knife and you cut basically a slit all the way through the deer's leg on each leg, this gambrel will slide through that slit, and then you can tie a rope off to it and hoist it up onto a tree, or they actually have like deer hanging stands that a gambrel goes onto just for doing this. And if you really want to spend the money for it, they have some pretty cool ones that are electrical too, where you don't even have to have like you and your buddy help pull the deer up over the tree, or ever if you have this hoist, literally you hit a button and it'll lift it up and down for you. So I mean, if you want to spend the money on that, go for it. The best gambrel I've found for the money is you can actually get it at Academy, and I'll have the link for this in the show notes. It's $14.99, and it's a complete kit, guys. It's got pulleys in it. You basically have one pulley on the gambrel itself and another pulley up near the tree you're using, and the rope goes through it, and it makes it super, super easy to pull the deer up and down and whatever else. You do need something to stake that rope to, so when I usually use it, I'll tie it to the back of my truck or whatever, and I'll just pull the deer up with my truck. Saves a lot of hassle. So once you get your deer up, what you're going to do is you want the deer's head to still be touching the ground a little bit, and basically that just helps keep the deer in place while you're skinning it so it don't spin and all that stuff while it's hanging from it. So you get your deer on that gambrel. What you're going to do is go right above each kneecap on the deer, and you're going to make a full circle cut with your knife all the way around. Try not to cut too far into the meat there, and watch out for the scent glands that deer have on their knees there. You don't want to rupture those. It's just not good. So, yeah, make full circle cuts all the way around those. After you're done with that, you're going to basically make slits down the back of the deer's legs from where you cut that circle around the knee straight down up to where you made your cut for the field dress. Now, that's going to be your starting point for your skinning. Now, I like to start from the top and go down. So after I do that, I'll take my knife, I'll start up by the kneecap there, and you just want to gently slide your knife between the meat and the skin, and just very carefully just start going away at it. And after a while, you'll get a little flap going. And you'll just want to hold that flap and just kind of slowly roll it back so you're keeping the hair away from your meat. And you just want to take your knife and just slide it between the meat and the skin the whole way. Try not to dig your knife in there. It doesn't take much. It's a real light touch, and it'll just help get that skin right off there. Now, you'll do that on both sides. And once you do that all the way down to the tailbone on the deer, you're going to want to get down as close to that tailbone as you can until you can actually see the bone itself. You're going to take your knife and you're going to pop the vertebrae apart on that deer bone. Now, you'll know if you get it in there right, because if you're sawing at it, stuff like that, you're going to know it's you shouldn't have to saw or anything. Vertebrae pop apart very easy. So you'll just slide your knife between that vertebrae on that tailbone, and you'll just wheel your knife a little bit, and you'll feel it disconnect. Once you do that, just work the deer hide down a little more, and then you're going to just grab literally handfuls on both sides and just pull straight down, and you'll be surprised. It's like skinning a rabbit or a squirrel. It just peels right off. Now, if you get a couple areas that get stuck, things like that, just take your knife and just rub it around in there. It'll help you bring it all the way down. Now, you'll do that all the way down. I usually pull the skin down about halfway, and then I'll start on the front legs, doing the same thing you did on the back. You just want to peel that all the way up and just work that skin down. Eventually, you get it all the way down. Now, if you're not going to take the meat out of the neck, which a lot of people don't, I like to use as much of the deer as I possibly can. Why waste the meat? But I try to work that skin all the way down to basically the start of the neck on the deer, like up underneath his chin there. Now, once you do that, take your knife and you're going to cut into the meat all the way down till you hit the deer's spine. Once you hit that spine, you're going to need a bone saw. A lot of people just use a a battery powered hacksaw, whatever else, and you're just going to cut the deer's head off, and you'll take all that and you'll just set it off to the side. Now, like I said, skinning a deer isn't that hard, but it is kind of an art form. Once you do one or two, it's not a big deal. Like, it's like I said, it's just like skinning a squirrel or a rabbit or anything else. Skin just kind of peels right off. Now, once you have your deer skinned, the next thing you want to do is try to clean up the body cavity and stuff as much as you possibly can. Get you a hose or whatever else. Really get the inside of that cleaned out really good. Try to get all the blood off, things like that done. It just makes it easier. Now, you're going to need a cooler, and you're going to fill that thing with ice or ice packs. If you put ice in there, try not to let the water from the melted ice sit on your meat for too long. Later on, I'll talk about that after you get this in here, but basically that water, it's going to get contaminated with blood and stuff like that, and it's not good to let your meat sit there and soak in that, obviously. So get yourself a cooler, have it ready to go, sit next to you full of ice, and now you're going to start quartering your deer. Now, when you quarter a deer, you're going to end up with about 5 or 6 individual pieces, I'd say. So I like to start at the bottom and work my way up. So basically, you're going to start by removing the front legs first. Now, before you remove the front legs, you're going to need to basically break off the bottom portion of the leg where the hoof and the part that still has some skin on it's there. It's pretty easy to do. You're going to take your knife and you just want to kind of cut as close into that socket as you possibly can. And once you do that, just work that meat away around it, and eventually you'll get it to a point where you can literally just kind of grab it and push it sideways, and it'll just snap right off. And you'll just cut whatever else is holding it on there, and throw it away. It'll be done. You can do that. Go ahead and do it for the back legs too, but you're not going to use that. You could use them to make yourself a cool deer gun holder or something like that if you want to go that route with it, but that's just toss them off to the side. So to actually separate the front leg, what you're going to do is you're going to grab the end of the part where you just cut that hoof and stuff off, and just kind of push that away from the body. You'll take your knife and you'll just slide it into basically the armpit of the deer there, and just carefully cut through it. Once you do that, you'll eventually get up and around, and you'll feel the leg just slowly start to separate off. And once you get cut up near that shoulder and everything, it will literally just like fall off. Like, it's kind of scary how easy it is to remove the leg of a deer off, the front leg anyway. So it's just cut it slowly up and around there, and eventually, like, you'll get it to the point where you'll just feel the whole leg there just come off, and you'll just finish cutting the meat off, pull that off to the side. You can go ahead and rinse that off if you want, but just place that first leg in the cooler, go around to the other side, go ahead and take the other leg off the same way you did the first, and get both those in the cooler. Now, after I get the front legs off, the next thing I go for is the back straps. The back straps is probably the most delicious cut of meat on a deer outside of the tenderloin, but it's something you carefully want to take out. You don't want to waste those back straps getting them off. So what you're going to do, you're going to go up to the tailbone of the deer, roughly. Find that spot along the spine near the tailbone. You're going to carefully work your knife down as close to the spine as you can, and just follow that all the way down to the neck, base of the neck of the deer. And you might have to make 2 or 3 passes, but just carefully keep it as tight as you can. And eventually you'll be able to get your hand and kind of roll that back strap back. You'll feel it starting to separate a little. Once you get to that point, you can just kind of slide your hand back between the back strap and the deer's spine, and just carefully work it, and it will just peel right out. It'll just peel right out, and you'll have one big, long, solid back strap ready to go. So you'll do that, and then the only part you'll have to cut off on the back strap is up near the tailbone where you started. Lift it all the way up to that point and use your knife and just cut it off. Take that, stash it off in the cooler. Go ahead and take the other side back strap out as well. Once I get the back straps out, I'll spin the deer around to where the body cavity is facing me, and you're going to get them tenderloins out. The tenderloin, basically, you're going to cut it out the exact same way you did the back strap. You'll see the tenderloin. It'll be towards the rump of the deer there. You'll see it right sitting in after you cut the back strap out. But same thing, get up close inside that body cavity next to the spine, just carefully work it out, and same way it'll peel right out, cut it off, chuck them in the cooler. 2 best cuts of meat are off the deer in your cooler, ready to go. Now, at this point, I like to go back and go ahead and get my neck meat and as much as I can cut off, things like that, get it put in the cooler. Don't waste the time and effort to mess with the ribs. You'll see people all the time, they'll take hacksaws, whatever else, they'll sit there and cut the ribs off like they do a cow and smoke them all stuff. To me, there's just not enough meat there worth the effort to sit there and go through and do it all. So that's just me. If you want to do it, that's the best time to do that for you. Get up and start removing the back legs, because once they're gone, nothing's going to be holding your deer up anymore, obviously. So if you want to go ahead and get those taken care of, get that meat out, all your scrap meat, whatever little shreds of meat you want left you off the deer. The hind legs are kind of hard to separate, but it's a little trick to doing it. But basically you're going to want to unhook one of the legs off your gambrel. Once you do that, same as the front, you're going to kind of push that leg back and away, and it's really helpful to have somebody else there with you just to hold the deer carcass from spinning. But push it away from you. You're going to work that knife up in that pit there till you hit the socket. Now your goal here, you want to expose that socket, so you're going to want to cut around it, and eventually you will see the ball and socket that holds that hind leg on there. Now once you get to that point, you're going to want to cut as much meat around that area as you can out, and just like the front, you're going to have to push and pull a little harder, but you just keep pushing that leg back, eventually you hear it pop and that thing will pop right out, and it'll be good to go. So that's how you get those both sides out. Now the other side, it's a little weird, like you're almost going to have to take your deer down and to pop it out. I guess if you wanted to, you could work it all loose and then grab the deer carcass itself and try to turn it hard enough to pop it out until you just have a leg hanging there. But I mean, you'll have to figure that last leg out. It's a little weird getting that one off. But so by this point, you'll have all your deer quartered up. It'll be sitting in your cooler, ready to go. Now, what I like to do after I get all my meat quartered and ready to go, sitting in my cooler, I like to basically tilt my cooler to where the drain is angled down, and I like to let my meat sit on ice for at least a day or two. The reason why is the colder that meat is, the easier it is to trim it up and debone it and everything like that. It's just way easier. Warm meat is real squishy, and it's hard to get your knife in some places and watch what you're doing. Cold meat, it's firmed up. It's just way better, guys. So basically, you're going to let your meat age in that cooler. Keep a close eye on it. Don't let all the ice melt out of it. I like to basically have a layer of ice in the bottom, my meat's sitting on it. I like to pour another bag on top. I have a pretty decent sized cooler that allows me to do that. So I'll just keep an eye on it for a day or two, make sure the temperature's staying okay in there. It's sitting in a nice cool spot, and just slowly let it drain out, and it'll be good to go. Now, after you've let your deer rest in that cooler for a couple days, it's nice and cool, and the meat's firmed up, you're ready to get into the final process of butchering, which is deboning and trimming up your cuts. Cleanliness and sanitation is very important here, guys. I have a dedicated table, set of knives, cutting board, everything just for processing my deer. I get that table out, I set it up, I'll completely sanitize the whole surface of it. If I have it on hand, I'll put newspaper and stuff down over top of it just to keep it blood and stuff from soaking into the table and stuff. I'll have my cutting board setting up there. Everything's ready to go. The knives that I use for this, and actually it's a whole kit for basically this whole process, is the Eastman Outdoors Processing Kit. It's only $22 on Amazon, and I've had it for a few years. It's got a bunch of stuff in it. It's got a caping and skinning knife, boning fillet knives. It's got a butcher knife and shears, a sharpener, and a bone saw in it. So it's like a complete kit ready to go. Plus, it actually has a DVD in there that helps along with this process if you're interested in watching that and stuff. But that's basically the knife kit I use. It's worked really well, like I said, for the last few years, and I'm going to keep using it till I can't use it anymore. So I get all that stuff set out, completely sanitized, ready to go. Then I will grab two separate pans. Now, one pan is going to be what I call my good cuts of meat, which would be like the back straps and the tenderloins and the good cuts like that. And then I have what I call the scrap meat, which is going to be what you're turning burger and jerky. Those will basically be like your shanks and the less tender cuts of meat. That's basically all they're going to be good and used for. So you get your pan set up, ready to go. Then you're going to be ready to start deboning each leg and separating them into their individual cuts. Now, the hind legs are way more tender meat than the front legs. The hind legs are good cuts for making a roast or for grilling, stuff like that. Whereas the front legs are mostly going to be turned into burger or jerky. The hind legs are divided basically into a bottom round, a top round, a rump, a shank, and a sirloin tip. Those are the cuts you're going to get out of the hind leg. The front leg, you're going to get a shoulder, an arm, and a shank out of it. There's not a whole lot of meat on the front legs there. When you grab your first quarter, let's say it's a hind leg, out of your cooler, and you throw it up on your table there, if you look close, you'll notice a translucent like film that looks like it's over top of all the meat. That's silver skin. You'll have to trim all that off as you go, along with any fat that you see. Deer fat is very bitter tasting. It's not good. You want to try to get as much of that out as you can. But when you go to separate them, underneath that silver skin, you'll notice it looks like little seams basically that run all over the meat. Those points are where you want to start your cuts at to start separating the meat into its individual cut. Just take your knife, pick a starting point, and just start following along one of them seams. Just let your knife just slide into there, and then as you separate it, stick your hand down in there, and you can start pulling it away until you start seeing the bone. Once you get to that point, you can just basically start trimming the meat off from around the bone, and you'll be left with that cut sitting off on the table, separated away from the bone and the rest of the cuts. It's really hard to actually mess it up, I guess. It was a little intimidating the first time I did it, but once I got in there and got going, like it's stupid easy how easy it is to actually separate them out. So don't let it intimidate you when you're looking at a whole leg laying there in front of you and like, oh my God, where do I start? Just like I said, pick a seam, start taking your knife and just follow that seam and just don't veer off from the seam. And when you're done, you'll have an entire leg divided up into nice cuts there. To get the silver skin off, like I said, you need to trim all that and the fat off. It's almost like the skinning process. Just get your knife between the silver skin and the meat and just kind of lift it up off there with your knife. And once you get going, you can just actually hang on to it and take your knife and just kind of gently scrape it off, and it'll all just peel off. And when you're done, you'll have a nice red cut of meat ready to be cooked. Once you get all that separated out and you have all your meat sitting on your table there, it's all been trimmed up and ready to go. Anything you're going to eat immediately, go ahead and cut that into, if you're going to make a roast, go ahead and grab one of your rumps and cut it into a roast ready to go and cook. Everything else, leave it whole until you're ready to use it. Cut it up just small enough for it to be freezer size, I guess. But if you leave it together, it doesn't go bad as fast, I guess you could say. It's not as affected by freezing it as it would be if you had everything cut into individual pieces ready to go. So that's your good cuts of meat. Your scrap cuts, it's going to become jerky and burger and all that stuff. Go ahead and grind that up into burger, do what you're going to do with it, and then freeze those into, like, I do them into 1 pound packs so I can just grab one out of the freezer if I'm making chili or something and have it ready to go. Everything else, like, it's going to be steaks. You're going to use this as steak later, anything. Leave it whole until it's that time, and then take it out of the freezer, let it thaw out, and then cut your steak cuts out of it. As for the freezing process, getting your meat ready to go into the freezer, you're going to need some plastic wrap and some freezer paper, a Sharpie, and some masking tape. So what you'll do, you'll take each cut and you'll wrap it in plastic wrap first. Now to do that, you want to get a good sized piece of plastic wrap and sit it down on your table. Grab whatever piece of meat it is, if it's a shoulder, whatever. You're going to stick that in the center of the plastic wrap, and then you're going to grab one side and flip it completely over the meat. Grab the other two sides, flip it over, and you're going to have one side left still on the table there. Once you do all that, you're going to roll it as tight as you can and push as much air out as you can while you roll it towards that last side. Once you get it there and you got as much air out as you can, just make sure it's plastic wraps firmly encased around that piece of meat. And then you're going to get you a nice size sheet of freezer paper ready. You'll lay that out on your table. You take your plastic wrap piece of meat. You'll stick that in one corner of the freezer paper. Once it's on that one corner, you're going to take it and grab that corner and you're going to roll it around the meat once. Once you get that one side rolled, you're going to grab like the right side corner. You're going to fold it over top the meat and tuck that corner up underneath. You're going to roll it again. And then grab the left side, flip it over, tuck that corner up underneath the meat, and then roll it towards the last corner, and then get you a piece of masking tape and tape it off. You're going to want to label every cut of meat. You want to put what type of meat it is, like venison. You're going to put what cut of meat it is, shoulder, and the date that you wrapped it. So say November 2018 is the date you're going to write on there. Take that Sharpie, write it on there so you know, because venison stored in a freezer is generally good for about a year. I've let them go about a year and a half with no issues, but that's probably like the pushing point before you're going to start dealing with freezer burn and quality issues with the meat. Any hunter anyway, deer meat's probably not going to last that long. Most of us barely make it to next deer season before we're completely out of meat anyway. So just keep that in mind though, about a year if you do it this way. The other way to do it is the way I've been doing it the last 2 deer seasons, is to vacuum seal your meat. There are a lot of vacuum sealer, food saver products, things like that on the market. The one I like to use is called the Food Saver Vacuum Sealer handheld version. It is literally a rechargeable vacuum sealer. They have special bags that go with it. They almost look like Ziploc bags. You put your meat inside of it and you seal it up, and it's got a little circle spot on the front of the bag there that you put that handheld food saver onto, and you hit the button on it and it will suck all the air out of the bag and leaves you with a nice vacuum sealed bag of meat. And every bag has a spot on the front to write what it is. I'll usually vacuum seal those and then I'll wrap them in freezer paper just as an added protection in the freezer there. That food saver vacuum sealer that I bought is about $32 and it's available on Amazon. It's Prime eligible. I'll have that in the show links as well if you want to check it out. The other reason I like it is because it is very portable. So if you're at deer camp and you don't want to bring a whole deer carcass back to your house to butcher it and everything, say you're at your cabin out on your property and you quarter your deer, you can go ahead and butcher it all and have your cuts ready to go. And while you're there, you can literally get this thing out, put all your cuts in the little baggies. You can vacuum seal it right out and throw them in your cooler. And then when you get home, there it is. You have a cooler full of already processed deer, ready to go, ready to eat. Cook your family up some, put the rest in the freezer, and it's all good to go. That is the entire process on how to skin, quarter, and butcher your own deer meat. It is a skill that does take some practice to really get good at. I've been doing it for a few years now. I don't know how many deer I've done. I've done quite a few though, between the ones that I harvest, my dad harvests, a few of our hunting buddies harvest. So I got my practice in pretty quick when I wanted to learn how to do it. And but like I said, once you learn how to do it, you're never going to want to pay a deer processor to do it again unless you just straight don't have the time to do it. If you would like to check out the products that I mentioned in the show today, I did have links to all those in the show notes on our website at www.ultoutdoorsmen, it's MEN, not MAN.com. I also have the video links to those videos I was talking about earlier off YouTube. So if you'd rather see the visual portion of it just to get a better idea of what I was talking about, you can always check those videos out as well. Don't forget to head over to our Facebook group and join it. There will be a link in the show notes for that as well. Get on there, share some experiences, ask some questions, just help grow the community and really get involved and help each other become better in the outdoors. And that's all I have for you today, guys. Don't forget the next episode will air in about 2 weeks. So get outside, make some memories, and have some fun. I'll talk to you next time, guys.